exploration. And so there were ships from America and also Egypt, Europe that were coming around South America and coming up the coast to Sitka. After they got around South America, got as far as Acapulco, then there was basically nothing further north until Sitka, because Los Angeles was just a little mission place and Seattle hadn't been discovered. San Francisco wasn't really much until the gold rush. So the ships then came all the way up to Sitka. And those that were from America were trading with the Russians who would, you know, they were sort of meeting there. The Russians were having problems. They couldn't feed their people. And they were not here as colonists. They were not here to grow stuff or animal husbandry. So they were trading with the Americans. The Americans were taking the furs over to to China. And the Russians had to give the Americans the furs for the food. It kind of broke part of their monopoly. The Tsar in Russia needed money. She had just lost the Crimean War. So for a lot of reasons like that, they decided to cut their losses, sell Alaska, to the United States for $7.2 million in 1867, right after our Civil War. And that's when the Russians had the choice of staying or leaving, and they all left. Now behind me are representing the Tlinkits. The Tlinkits had other trading partners other than the Russians, because like I said, those other boats were coming up the coast of South America, up to Sitka, and so they had trading partners. And that's why in this representation of a potlatch, they've got on their party clothes, their regalia, but you'll notice they've also got shoes and trousers and also fabric. None of our native peoples had fabric, woven fabric, except till trade. They always wore animal-based clothing. But they've had contact, they've had trade, and so they've traded it for fabric amongst other things. And the buttons and beads, trade items. This is not early before any new people came. We're representing a potlatch, which is a gathering. Perhaps they're honoring the life of somebody that died. Perhaps they've just raised the house. And the people who live in this clan have invited other people from other villages. It's going to last several days. There's going to be feasting, storytelling, singing or dancing, but also an economic exchange, because none of our native peoples had money. And so they didn't have wampum either. And so what you did is during a potlatch is when you paid off what was owed and when you received what was owing. And perhaps this sea otter pelt down here is being given to somebody because it is owed or owing. But that was part of the whole potlatch. It was gift giving, but it was gift giving with a purpose. It was paying off folks you needed to pay something off to. The big house here, plank house, remember, it's huge. And they had a class system. So the aristocracy lived in the back. That was where the chieftains and the high-ranking people lived. In the middle were the common people. And at the far end, where there was an opening, is where the slaves slept. Because in those big dugout canoes that I mentioned, that would hold 40 people or so, they would be going raiding other villages for slaves. So the Tlinkits are the folks who had two moieties, the ravens and the eagles. And everybody was a raven or an eagle, and it all depended upon your mother. Boys and girls, siblings, that were the product of this woman, would be the same clan as she. If she was eagle, they were eagle, male and female. And same with ravens. And then when it was time to marry, you married the other. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes along with that. Who was in charge of the house? What house did you live in? What were your obligations to other people? What was their obligations to you? Trust me, folks, you don't want me to go into any more details than that. Very complicated system. And under these two, ravens and eagles, there were several smaller houses. So you will hear of the wolf house, the salmon house, the coho house, the frog house, stuff like that. But each house belonged to one of those two clans. And so very, very difficult system. You'll notice that the lady here in the back has got a funny lower lip, and that's a leveret. It's high status. When she was a child, they poked a little teeny hole, like pierced earrings, and only they kept making it bigger and bigger. And so it was a very desirable thing to have. It showed status, and they tell me when it came out, and it was removable, that she drooled an awful lot. But all early peoples did some sort of tattooing and body piercings, and that's just an example of it. very quickly, that's the Russians and the Tlinkits. Now let's go talk about the Eskimo-speaking people.